The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended by 3 weeks. This comes as President Trump says he will not be rushed into reaching a peace deal with Iran. For the latest on the Middle East conflict and more, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. So Reggie, there's a lot to unpack with the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. Let's first start, though, with the developments in the talks between Israel and Lebanon. How did they reach the ceasefire extension, and what does this mean for the broader conflict?
Well, it's unclear at this point. We know that talks were held again yesterday with the ambassadors of both Lebanon and Israel to the United States. That included Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance. There was also kind of a roundtable in the Oval Office that reporters were eventually invited into. The U.S. president says that this 3-week ceasefire is going to be a further foundation to allow for more higher-level talks between these two nations, but it is worth pointing out that as talks were underway yesterday, both the IDF and Hezbollah exchanged fire with each other. So the ceasefire is holding, but it's fragile. Israeli officials suggest that this has nothing to do really with its occupation in southern Lebanon. It is simply trying to get rid of the threat from Hezbollah, which it argues the Lebanese government hasn't been able to do. It is worth pointing out, though, that because Israel and Lebanon are technically at war with each other and have been since the 50s, communication between the two countries at high levels is legally contentious. So it isn't quite clear how things can progress without any kind of U.S. intervention, but at least this 3-week ceasefire was announced, which the Americans see as a step forward.
All right, now there's been a lot of activity in the Strait of Hormuz, Reggie. So what's happening there, and how is this impacting the fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire?
Well, it's interesting. This week we heard from the White House, from the press secretary, to say that there are these speedboats that are potentially laying mines through the Strait of Hormuz that the United States is now actively going to be taking out, saying that they have the ability to do that has been seen as they've gone after drug boats throughout the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. It's interesting, though, because we have also heard from the Americans that they have taken away all of the mine-laying capabilities from Iran. Well, Iran also said that it wasn't laying any mines, although says that those mines could still be there. So it's a bit confusing. It's also still showing and highlighting the dangers that exist in trying to navigate the Strait of Hormuz, particularly when the Iranians are maintaining their blockade and they're seizing some ships. The Americans are also keeping their blockade in place, but they've also said that if Iran is seizing ships and they're not Israeli or American, that it's technically not a ceasefire violation because they're international ships. Now, it's not clear how other countries may feel about that, but the tensions are high. The question is, are talks going to resume to try and ease that stress in the Strait of Hormuz, because we are seeing the impacts play out on a global basis here, Miranda, as oil again creeps above the $100 a barrel mark.
So, Reggie, where does America stand in the war right now? Because Trump says the U.S. has total control of the strait, but his administration has also just fired the Secretary of the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, look, personnel changes are being criticized kind of across the board here in the middle of a war. So, look, the United States does have some control over the strait. It says that it's turned back 33 ships, and it does have a significant Navy presence. But having now shaken up Navy leadership by getting rid of the secretary, there is some concern here from analysts that this could show that there is a bit of a fracture in the U.S. government, that maybe it is portraying weakness on the global stage, and that's something that could be taken advantage of by American adversaries, including the Iranian government. The Navy secretary was fired, according to the Pentagon, because he was subordinate in the eyes of Donald Trump. It's because he wasn't moving quick enough in terms of matters like shipbuilding, which is something that can take a significant amount of time. But with now another person from the Pentagon at a senior level let go, again, it has shaken the nerves in lower ranking parts of the defense sector. Unclear kind of what the strategy is going forward.
All right, Reggie, quickly before we let you go here, some news on this continent. We know the deadline to renew the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement. It's drawing closer, and Trump's top trade negotiator was asked about this when he testified earlier this week. So what did he have to say?
Yeah, so it's already been made clear that Canada and the U.S. are likely going to blow past that July deadline as they try to hammer out some kind of agreement here on CUSMA. We heard from Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade rep, suggest that there are some pillars of the free trade pact that Donald Trump originally signed into place that are working, but others aren't. And Greer was, critical of Prime Minister Carney's comments about trying to take advantage of more globalization when the Americans see that as something that can be detrimental to America's economy. So some of the concerns here are still about demanding concessions. Some of them are about American booze not being on the shelves in Canadian outlets, which the United States calls an irritant and says that there could be ramifications for. Still, the conversations are going forward. They're not as quick as the conversations as the ones between the United States and Mexico. So the ball is rolling. It's rolling very slowly. We just have to wait and see what happens come July when that deadline comes and goes and what the plan is beyond that.
All right, that is our Washington correspondent, Reggie Cecchini. Thank you for the breakdown, Reggie.